6 months. That's how long I'd been away, working the oil fields up north. It was grueling work, but it paid well, and every time I stepped onto that plane home, I told myself it was worth it. 1 month off to spend with my wife, Sarah, and our son, Ethan. 1 month of family dinners, movie nights, and making up for lost time. I never expected to come home to an empty house. The silence was the first thing that unsettled me. No excited footsteps running down the hall. No smell of Sarah's cooking. Just stillness. I dropped my duffel bag by the door and called out, "Ethan." "Sarah." Nothing. Then, from the living room, I heard the sound of cartoons playing softly on the TV. I walked in and found Ethan sitting cross-legged on the floor, a juice box in one hand, a remote in the other. He looked up and grinned. "Hey, Dad." I exhaled, relieved. "Hey, buddy. Where's your mom?" Without missing a beat, he shrugged and said, "She's on a date with my new dad." I froze. A sharp ringing filled my ears, drowning out the television, the clock ticking on the wall, even the hum of the fridge. "Come again." My voice was calm, but my hands curled into fists. Ethan took a sip of his juice and blinked up at me. "Mom said she was going out with her boyfriend. She said he's my new dad." I felt my world tilt on its axis. The weight of exhaustion, the months of sacrifice, the longing to be home, everything crumbled in an instant. I swallowed hard and forced a smile. "Did she tell you where she was going?" A restaurant, I think." He turned back to the TV. "She goes out a lot now." I felt something inside me crack. I reached for my phone and called Sarah. Straight to voicemail. I clenched my jaw and took a deep breath. No. I wasn't going to let anger cloud my judgment. Not yet. I needed answers. I kneeled down to Ethan's level. "Hey, buddy. Do you know this guy's name?" "Uh-huh." He grinned. "His name is Travis. He has big muscles, and he lets me ride on his shoulders." I closed my eyes. A muscle-bound boyfriend. My wife playing house with another man while I was breaking my back to provide for them. I wasn't the kind of man to make a scene. But I was going to find this Travis, and he and I were going to have a little talk. I sat on the couch, my fingers gripping my phone so tightly I thought it might snap in half. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what Ethan had just told me. Sarah. Cheating. A boyfriend. Travis. I wanted to scream, to punch a hole through the wall, to demand answers, but first, I had to be smart. Ethan, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me, kept watching his cartoons. I forced my voice to stay even. "Hey, buddy, when did Mom start hanging out with Travis?" He didn't even look away from the screen. "I dunno. A while ago. He comes over a lot. He brought me a toy car once." I felt something burn in my chest. Some other man giving my kid gifts while I was thousands of miles away working overtime to keep a roof over their heads. Ethan yawned. "Mom says he's nice. She says you're always gone, so," he trailed off, then frowned like he was trying to remember something. "She said it's okay because you have another family." I blinked. "What? What do you mean?" I asked carefully. Ethan shrugged. "She told me you have a new wife in another city." I exhaled through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. Sarah was feeding my son lies. Lies. I stood up, pacing. The logical part of me told me to wait, to gather more information before confronting her. But another part of me, the part of me that had sacrificed everything for my family, was already seeing red. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from Sarah. "Hey, babe. Just ran out for a bit. Be home soon. Can't wait to see you, red heart." I stared at the message, feeling like I was going to be sick. A bit? She'd been out on a date. And now she was coming home like nothing was wrong. I took a deep breath and made a decision. I wasn't going to wait. I was going to find Travis. And I was going to make sure he understood, in no uncertain terms, that my family wasn't something he could just walk into. I sat there, staring at Sarah's text, my pulse hammering in my ears. She was acting like everything was normal. Like she wasn't out with another man, parading him around in public, letting our son believe he had a new dad. I clenched my jaw. I needed to see this for myself. I crouched next to Ethan, forcing a smile. "Hey, bud, do you remember which restaurant Mom went to?" He thought for a moment, then nodded. "The one with the big red sign. The one where they have pancakes all day." I knew exactly which place he meant. Benny's Diner. A local spot about 10 minutes away. I grabbed my keys. "Hey, wanna watch a movie? I'll be back in a little bit." Ethan nodded, already focused back on the screen. He had no idea the weight of what he'd just told me. I stepped outside, took a deep breath, and got in my truck. My hands were tight on the wheel as I pulled out of the driveway. I told myself I was just going to see. Just confirm it with my own eyes before deciding what to do next. But deep down, I already knew. Benny's Diner was busy. Saturday night. Families, couples, people coming in for late dinners. I scanned the parking lot, my eyes darting from car to car. Then I saw it. A black Dodge Challenger. Muscle car. Just like a musclehead would drive. I pulled into a space, my fingers drumming against the steering wheel. I didn't go in right away. I needed a second. Because once I stepped through that door, there was no turning back. I flexed my fingers, exhaled slowly, then got out. The second I walked inside, I spotted her. Sarah. Laughing. Smiling. Sitting across from him. And then I saw him. Travis. Broad shoulders, short cropped hair, that cocky grin. He had one of those gym rat builds, big arms, tight shirt, like he wanted everyone in the room to know how much he could lift. And he had his hand on my wife's. I saw red. For a split second, I wanted to march over there and rip his arm clean out of its socket. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I walked over, slow and steady. Sarah was mid-laugh when she saw me. Her face drained of color. "Babe," she stammered, snatching her hand away. You're home." I looked at Travis. He didn't look surprised. That's when I knew. He knew exactly who I was. And he didn't care. I pulled out the chair across from them and sat down. Sarah swallowed hard. I was just catching up with a friend. I ignored her. I looked straight at him. "So, you're Travis." He smirked, leaning back in his chair. "And you must be the husband." I felt my fists tighten under the table. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This was disrespect. And I was about to show him exactly why that was a mistake. Travis leaned back in his seat, his smirk unwavering. He wasn't afraid. That was his first mistake. Sarah was fidgeting, her fingers twisting in her lap. "Babe, it's not." I held up a hand, silencing her. My eyes stayed locked on Travis. "You're a bold one," I said evenly. He shrugged. "Not my fault your wife needed a real man while you were gone." That was his second mistake. I felt my jaw clench so tight it hurt. I wasn't a hothead, I'd spent years learning how to keep my cool under pressure. But this wasn't just some guy. This was a man sitting across from me, smirking, knowing full well he was sleeping with my wife. Sarah shot him a panicked look. "Travis, stop." "Why?" He chuckled, shaking his head. He should know the truth. He left, I stepped in. That's how it works. I exhaled slowly. That right? He grinned. Yeah. And let's be real, man, you were gone for 6 months. What did you think was gonna happen? That was his third mistake. I moved fast. 1 second, I was seated. The next, my hands were on the table, and then, with a sharp shove, I flipped it forward, sending their drinks and plates crashing into his lap. Travis shot up, cursing, but I was already on my feet, in his face, my voice low and steady. You think I'm some fool? I growled. Think you can sit across from me and run your mouth like that? His nostrils flared, but I saw it, the flicker of doubt in his eyes. He hadn't expected me to react. Sarah gasped, standing up and grabbing my arm. Stop it. Not here. I didn't take my eyes off him. You like stepping into another man's house, playing daddy with his kid? I said. Tell me, Travis, how does it feel knowing you're just her side piece while I was the one taking care of her? His smirk wavered. She doesn't need you anymore. I smiled. That's funny. Because she's still wearing the ring I bought her. Sarah flinched. Travis squared his shoulders, trying to regain control. I'm not scared of you, man. I leaned in closer. Then you're dumber than you look. The diner had gone silent. Every set of eyes was on us now. The waitress behind the counter had a phone in her hand. Maybe calling the cops. Sarah pulled at my arm again. Let's go, please. Don't do this here. I took one last look at Travis. Enjoy your meal, tough guy. Then I turned and walked out, leaving the mess behind. The drive home was a blur. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, silent. I knew she was waiting for me to explode. I didn't. Not yet. When we pulled into the driveway, I killed the engine and stared straight ahead. Tell me the truth, I said quietly. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. It's not what you think. I turned to her. Dead in the eyes. Ethan told me everything, I said. You've been bringing him around. Letting him think Travis is his new dad. She paled. I never. I cut her off. Don't. Lie. Her lip trembled. I didn't mean for it to happen. I let out a cold laugh. Yeah. You accidentally fell into bed with him. How long, Sarah? She swallowed hard. I repeated, my voice sharp. How long? She looked away. 5 months. I exhaled slowly. 5 months. Meaning as soon as I left, she was with him. I clenched my jaw. So everything you said to me on the phone, all those, I love yous, just lies. Tears welled in her eyes. I was confused. Confused? My voice rose. Sarah, we have a kid. A family. I was working myself to the bone for you too, and you were playing house with another man. She sniffled, wiping her eyes. I was lonely. I scoffed. Lonely? You think I wasn't? You think I enjoyed being away for half a year? I did it for us. She shook her head. I didn't plan it. It just happened. I stared at her. Did you love him? She hesitated. Just for a second. And that was enough. I nodded slowly. I get it now. Sarah reached for my hand. Please, let's just. I pulled away. No, Sarah, I said quietly. There's no coming back from this. Her face crumpled. What are you saying? I looked her dead in the eyes. I'm done. And I meant it. But the worst was still to come. Sarah's breath hitched. You don't mean that, she whispered. I stared at her, unblinking. I've never meant anything more in my life. Silence filled the truck. The weight of everything, the betrayal, the lies, the months she spent pretending, hung between us like a thick fog. Then she tried to reach for me again. Please, let's talk. I pushed the door open and stepped out. We're done talking. I didn't slam the door. Didn't storm off. I just walked inside. Cold. Controlled. And as I did, one last thought clawed at the back of my mind. Ethan. I had spent years breaking my back for my son. Loved him more than anything. But now. I couldn't shake what Travis had said at the diner. Not my fault your wife needed a real man while you were gone. I didn't want to believe it. But after 5 months of lies, what if there was more? What if Ethan wasn't mine? That thought alone nearly made me sick. I had to know. That night, Sarah tried to pretend everything was fine. She sat across from me at the dinner table, eyes puffy from crying, picking at her food. Ethan chatted away, oblivious to the war raging between his parents. I nodded along, forcing a smile. But inside, my mind was racing. I needed proof. So I waited. I waited until Sarah went to bed, then I crept into Ethan's room. He was fast asleep, curled up with his stuffed dinosaur. I swallowed the lump in my throat. This was my son. My boy. And yet, I had to be sure. I reached for his hairbrush, plucking a few loose strands. Slipped them into a plastic bag. My hands were shaking. Then I grabbed my own toothbrush from the bathroom. Took a few stray hairs. It felt like betrayal. But if Sarah had been lying about one thing, who's to say she wasn't lying about another? I tucked the bag into my jacket. Tomorrow, I'd get a DNA test. And if the results came back wrong, Sarah's affair would be the least of her worries. The envelope felt like it weighed 100 pounds in my hands. I sat in my truck outside the testing lab, my pulse pounding in my ears. I already knew what it was going to say. I told myself I was just being paranoid. That this was just another cruel trick my mind was playing on me after Sarah's betrayal. But deep down, I already knew. I exhaled slowly, tore open the envelope, and unfolded the paper. My eyes scanned the page, skipping past all the medical jargon until I found what I was looking for. Probability of paternity, 0%. I stared at it. Read it again. And again. 0%. Ethan wasn't my son. The world tilted. For a long time, I just sat there, gripping the paper so tightly my knuckles turned white. 7 years. 7 years I had loved that boy, raised him, held him when he cried, taught him how to ride a bike, kissed his scraped knees. And all along, he was never mine. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. The betrayal I'd felt before. That was nothing compared to this. Sarah hadn't just cheated. She had stolen my entire life. I slammed my fist against the dashboard, the pain barely registering. This wasn't just infidelity. This was fraud. This was theft. And Sarah was going to pay for every single second of it. I drove home in a fog, my grip on the steering wheel like a vice. The DNA test sat on the passenger seat, mocking me with its cold, clinical truth. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my rage had settled into something calmer. Sharper. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to punch walls. I was going to make Sarah suffer the way she made me suffer. I walked inside, setting the envelope down on the kitchen counter. Sarah was washing dishes, her back to me. She turned, smiling cautiously. "Hey, where were you?" I didn't answer. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, her smile faltering. "You okay?" I pulled out a chair, sat down, and slid the envelope toward her. "Open it." Her brow furrowed. What is this? Just open it. She hesitated, then tore it open. I watched her face as she read. Her eyes darted over the words once. Twice. Then her lips parted slightly, her whole body going still. No, she whispered. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. No. She shook her head, tears already welling up. This has to be wrong. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Wrong? You mean like lying to me for 7 years? She clutched the paper in trembling hands. I didn't know for sure. I slammed my fist against the table. Don't lie to me. She flinched. I stood up slowly, towering over her. You knew, Sarah. Maybe not at first. But when you saw that kid grow up with another man's face. You knew. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I was scared. I scoffed. Yeah. Well, now it's your turn to be scared. She gasped, shaking her head frantically. Please, don't do this. Don't take it out on Ethan. He loves you. Don't you dare use him to save yourself. My voice was low, lethal. I love that boy, but you took away my choice. You made me believe he was mine while you let me waste my life breaking my back for a lie. Sarah fell to her knees, sobbing. Please. I'll do anything. I stared down at her, my jaw clenched. For the first time, she wasn't in control. And I was going to make sure she never was again. Sarah was on her knees, clutching at my leg like a drowning woman. Pathetic. Please, she sobbed. We can fix this. I yanked my leg free and stepped back. There's no we anymore, Sarah. She shook her head violently. No, 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 you love Ethan. You're his father in every way that matters. My stomach twisted. She was right about one thing, I did love Ethan. But that didn't erase what she'd done. I turned away, gripping the back of a chair so hard my knuckles turned white. Who is he? Sarah sucked in a sharp breath. I turned back to her. Who is Ethan's real father? She opened her mouth. Closed it. More tears spilled down her face. I slammed my fist against the chair. Say his name, Sarah. She flinched. Her whole body was trembling now. And then, barely above a whisper, she said it. Travis. Everything inside me froze. I stared at her, my pulse roaring in my ears. Say that again. She swallowed hard. It's Travis. For a long moment, I just stood there. Then I let out a low, bitter chuckle. Of course it is. The man she destroyed our family for, the man she had my son calling new dad, he was the real father all along. I could almost feel something inside me snap. Sarah crawled toward me, gripping my hands. But you raised him. Travis was never there. You're his real father. I looked down at her, my expression unreadable. No, Sarah. You don't get to decide that anymore. Her breath hitched. Please, she whispered. What are you going to do? I smiled. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I finally knew exactly what needed to happen. I was going to make Travis pay. And when I was done, Sarah would wish she had never met me. I didn't waste time. The moment Sarah whispered his name, something inside me snapped into focus. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. This was about taking back control. I grabbed my keys and turned for the door. Sarah scrambled to her feet. Where are you going? I didn't answer. She rushed after me, grabbing my arm. Please. Don't do anything crazy. I yanked free so hard she nearly fell. You don't get to tell me what to do anymore, Sarah. Then I walked out, slamming the door behind me. Travis lived exactly where I thought he would. A flashy apartment complex on the nice side of town. The kind of place a guy like him, a gym rat, womanizing scumbag, would feel right at home in. I pulled into the lot, parked, and sat there for a moment, staring at his door. I wasn't going to kill him. No, that would be too easy. I was going to take from him what mattered most. I stepped out, walked up to his door, and knocked. Loud. A few seconds passed, then I heard footsteps. The door swung open. And there he was. Travis. Smug. Shirtless. Looking exactly as I remembered from the diner. His smirk appeared instantly. Well, well. If it isn't the husband. I smiled. Hey there, Daddy. That wiped the smirk right off his face.